The entertainment world suffered another blow today as Mr. Entertainer Sammy Davis Jr. died after an 8-month battle with throat cancer.
Dean Martin was 73 years old, and he had not left his Beverly Hills home in 6 months. Not for groceries, not for doctor's appointments, not for fresh air, not for anything. The world beyond those walls had become too loud, too quick, too crowded with memories he no longer had the strength to face. Most days, Dean stayed in his bedroom, sitting beside old photographs, drinking coffee that went cold, staring at faces from another lifetime, and waiting for the hours to disappear.
Singer, dancer, comic, actor, musician, Davis was admired for his versatility as well as his energy.
It was Wednesday, May 16th, 1990. At 6:47 in the morning, the phone rang. Dean didn't move. He never answered anymore. Let the machine take it. Let whoever it was leave their message. Let the world keep spinning without him. But the ringing didn't stop. 15 times, 20, then more. Someone wasn't calling casually. Someone needed him. Finally, his housekeeper, Maria, knocked softly on the bedroom door. "Mr. Martin," she said, her voice careful. "It's Mr. Sinatra. He says it's urgent. He says you need to pick up." Dean stared at the phone. Frank Sinatra never called this early. Frank never begged through a housekeeper. If Frank was insisting, then something had broken. Dean reached for the receiver with a trembling hand. "Yeah?" On the other end, Frank's voice was cracked open. "Dean, he's gone." Dean's body went still. "Who?" But he already knew. Frank swallowed hard. "Sammy. Sammy's gone." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Dean sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, gripping the phone like it was the only thing keeping him upright. When? This morning, 5:30. Throat cancer finally took him. He fought it for 2 years, but it got him anyway. Frank's voice broke again. "Dean, our boy is gone." Dean closed his eyes.
CNN's Sherry Claypool recalls the life and times of one of Hollywood's most beloved entertainers.
Sammy Davis Jr., his friend, his partner, his brother in every way that mattered. 40 years of laughter, music, dressing rooms, hotel suites, late-night jokes, stage lights, private pain, and the kind of loyalty that didn't need explaining. Gone. "Dean?" Frank asked. "You still there?" "Yeah." "The funeral's Saturday. Forest Lawn, 11 in the morning. Frank paused. "You need to be there." Dean's throat tightened. "I can't." "What do you mean you can't?" "I can't do it, Frank. I can't watch them put him in the ground. I can't stand in front of people. I can't hear the cameras clicking. I can't pretend I'm all right." His voice dropped. "I just can't." "Dean, this is Sammy. This is our Sammy. You have to be there. Find someone else to speak. Get Shirley, get Altovise, get anyone. Nobody else can do what you can do. I'm not that man anymore. Nobody else loved him the way you did." Dean looked toward the photographs on his dresser. There was Sammy, grinning under stage lights, one arm thrown around Dean's shoulder like the whole world was a joke, only they understood. "He'd want you there," Frank said. Dean whispered, "He'd understand why I'm not." For a moment, Frank said nothing. Then his voice turned hard. "You're going to hide in that house for the rest of your life? You're going to let Sammy go into the ground without saying goodbye? That's not the Dean I know. That's not the man who stood on stage with us for 30 years.
We haven't always agreed with each other, but the respect was always there."
Dean's face crumpled. "That man's dead, Frank. He died when my son crashed that plane. He died when everything good in the world disappeared. I'm just what's left." He swallowed. "And what's left isn't strong enough to bury Sammy." Frank's answer came cold and immediate. "Then get strong enough. You've got 3 days." The line went dead. Dean sat there holding the receiver, listening to the dial tone hum in his ear, feeling 40 years settle onto his chest like stone. Sammy Davis Jr., the kid with one eye and more talent than anybody in show business. The kid who could sing, dance, act, play drums, play trumpet, do impressions, make people laugh, make people cry, and make a room believe in magic for a little while. The kid who had faced cruelty, racism, humiliation, and doors slammed in his face, yet still walked on stage smiling like joy was an act of defiance.
He always gave his all. You always felt when you watched the Sammy Davis show that he was giving his absolute maximum. And even when he didn't feel good, and even when he had the hip problem and everything else, you never knew it.
Sammy had survived things that would have turned other men bitter. Somehow, he kept giving, kept performing, kept reaching for people, kept believing there was still goodness somewhere in the world. And Dean had loved him for that, because Sammy reminded him that laughter could survive pain, that music could outlive grief, that even broken men could still find a reason to stand beneath the lights. Now Sammy was gone. Dean slowly rose and walked to his closet. He opened the door and stared at the suits hanging in the dark. Black suits, funeral suits. He had worn too many of them lately. Dean Paul in 1987, his mother in 1989, and now Sammy. The people Dean loved kept dying, and each time he was expected to put on a black suit, step into a room full of grief, and act like he could survive it, like there was still something inside him holding everything together. He pulled a black suit from the closet and laid it carefully across the bed. For a long moment, he just stood there, staring at it. Then he tried to picture the funeral, walking into Forest Lawn, seeing the casket, seeing Frank, seeing Shirley MacLaine and the rest of the old crowd, the ones who had once filled stages and headlines, now standing quietly, pretending they were holding up better than they were. He imagined seeing Altovise, Sammy's widow, completely shattered. Seeing Sammy's children, trying to understand something no child should ever have to understand. Dean's chest tightened. He couldn't do it. He couldn't walk into that room and be the strong one when he felt like there was nothing left inside him to give. But then, through the weight of it all, a memory surfaced, and something Sammy had said right after Dean Paul died. Dean had stayed in bed for 3 weeks, wouldn't eat, wouldn't talk, wouldn't move, just stared at the ceiling day after day, asking a question that had no answer. Why his son? Why not him?
To sum Sammy up would be, I could, with a 4-letter word, and it's spelled L-O-V-E.
Then one afternoon, the door opened, and Sammy walked in like he belonged there. He didn't ask permission. He didn't hesitate. He just crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm not leaving until you talk to me." "Go away, Sam." "Nope. I mean it." "So do I," Sammy said. "I'll sleep here if I have to. I'll move in, whatever it takes." "There's nothing to say," Dean muttered. "My son is dead. That's it. That's the whole story." Sammy shook his head. "No, that's not the story." Dean didn't respond. "The story," Sammy said gently, "is that you loved him. The story is that you were an incredible father. The story is that he knew that, and that matters. That doesn't disappear just because he's gone." Dean turned his face away. "It doesn't matter anymore. Nothing matters anymore." That's when Sammy reached out, took Dean by the face, and turned him back. "Listen to me," he said, firm now. "You don't get to quit. You don't get to give up. People need you. I need you. Frank needs you. Your other kids need you." Dean's eyes filled, but he didn't speak. "And Dean Paul," Sammy continued softly, "wherever he is, he needs you to keep living, to keep being the man who raised him, the man who showed him what strength looks like."
A great pioneer in entertainment and for black people. Someone who was very courageous and set many examples.
"I'm not strong," Dean whispered. Sammy didn't hesitate. "Yes, you are. You're the strongest person I know. You just forgot because the pain is so big right now. But the strength is still there. It didn't go anywhere. It's under the pain, waiting for you to remember it." That was the moment Dean finally broke. The tears came hard and uncontrollable, not quiet, not dignified, raw, deep, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere buried for too long. Sammy didn't try to stop it, didn't try to fix it. He just stayed there, arms around him, holding him together while everything inside him fell apart. Now Sammy was gone, and somehow, impossibly, Dean was the one who had to be strong. Thursday morning, Dean picked up the phone and called Frank back. "I'll be there." There was a pause, then a long exhale on the other end. "Thank God," Frank said quietly. "I thought I lost both of you." "What do you want me to do?" Dean asked. "Whatever you can. Speak if you can. Just be there if you can." "But Dean, people need to see you. They need to know you're still here, that what we had meant something." Dean closed his eyes. "Okay." "You doing all right?" Frank asked. Dean let out a small, tired breath. "No, but I'll get through Saturday. After that, I don't know, but I'll get through Saturday." Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of paper and silence. Dean sat in his bedroom writing, then crossing it out, writing again, then tearing the page away. He tried to put 40 years into words, 40 years of friendship, of stages and dressing rooms, of late nights, private jokes, shared glances, and moments that no one else would ever understand. 40 years of Sammy making everything lighter just by walking into the room.
I mean, could I be where I am today if I were lazy and if I were a boozer?
But nothing felt right. Every sentence sounded wrong. Too stiff, too simple, too distant, too heavy. Nothing came close to what Sammy had been. By Friday night, Dean stopped trying. He set the papers aside and made a quiet decision. He would speak from the heart, no script, no rehearsed lines. Just whatever came when he stood in front of his friend one last time. Because once, a long time ago, that had always been enough. Back when he trusted himself. Back when grief hadn't hollowed everything out. Saturday morning, May 19th, 1990. Dean woke at 5. Sleep wasn't possible anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sammy's face. Heard that unmistakable laugh. The one that filled a room and pulled laughter out of everyone else, whether they understood the joke or not. Maria helped him dress. The black suit hung loosely on his frame. He had lost 30 pounds since Dean Paul died. Food had stopped mattering. Most things had. What used to fit him perfectly now looked like it belonged to someone else. Like a child trying on his father's clothes. Dean stared at himself in the mirror for a long moment. Then he turned away. "You look good, Mr. Martin," Maria said softly, adjusting the sleeve of his jacket. Dean glanced at himself in the mirror, hollow eyes staring back at him. "I look like death." She shook her head gently. "You look like a man who's been through hell and survived. That's different." Dean let out a quiet breath. "I'm not sure I survived." "You're standing," she said. "You're breathing. And you're going to honor your friend. That's surviving, whether it feels like it or not." Dean didn't answer. He just gave a small nod and turned toward the door. The drive to Forest Lawn Memorial Park took 35 minutes. Dean sat in the back seat, silent, watching Los Angeles drift past the window like a film he didn't recognize anymore. The city had changed so much since he first arrived in 1946, chasing something he couldn't even name back then. New buildings, different streets, a different rhythm. Nothing looked the same. Nothing felt the same. He felt like a ghost moving through it all. Someone who had belonged to another version of this place, another lifetime that no longer existed. When they reached the cemetery, it was already overflowing. Cars lined every entrance. News crews stood shoulder to shoulder. Photographers hovered near the gates. Fans gathered behind barriers, hoping for a glimpse of the people they had only ever seen on screens. Sammy's death wasn't just personal, it was public. Headlines had called it the end of an era, the passing of one of the last giants, the final chapter of something that could never be recreated. And now everyone wanted to witness it, capture it, turn grief into something they could hold on to. Dean's driver pulled quietly toward a side entrance, away from the chaos. Frank had arranged it that way. Frank understood. Dean couldn't face the cameras, couldn't answer questions, couldn't pretend to be Dino when he was still struggling to remember how to be Dean. Inside the chapel, nearly 200 people had already gathered. Dean paused just inside the doorway, taking it all in. Faces he knew. Faces he hadn't seen in years, old Las Vegas performers, Hollywood names, musicians, comedians, actors, people who had crossed paths with Sammy Davis Jr. somewhere along the long road of his career. Everyone dressed in black, everyone carrying the same quiet weight. Some cried openly, others held it back, their expressions tight, fragile. Frank Sinatra spotted him almost immediately. He moved through the crowd and pulled Dean into a firm embrace. "Thank you for coming," Frank said, his voice low. Dean gave a faint shrug. "Where else would I be?" Frank studied him for a moment. "I know how hard this is for you, after your son, after everything. But Sammy, he'd be so happy you're here." Dean didn't respond right away. His eyes drifted toward the front of the chapel. "Is that him?" he asked quietly, gesturing toward the casket. Frank nodded. "Yeah, they're not opening it. His face. The cancer. It was bad at the end. Altavisa wants people to remember him the way he was." Dean swallowed. He stepped forward slowly, each step heavier than the last, until he reached the casket. It was simple, black. A spray of white flowers rested gently on top. Inside that box was Sammy Davis Jr., the same man who had walked into his life decades earlier and never really left. The kid who had made him laugh harder than anyone else. The friend who had stood beside him through everything, success, failure, joy, and loss. The brother he had chosen. Dean reached out and placed his hand on the casket. It was cold, smooth, final. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, anything. He wanted to apologize for not visiting more, for disappearing into his own grief while Sammy had been fighting his last battle, for not being there the way Sammy had always been there for him. But the words wouldn't come. All that came were tears, quiet ones. They slipped down his face as he stood there in front of 200 people, saying goodbye without a single sentence. A familiar presence stepped beside him. Shirley MacLaine gently placed an arm around his waist. "He loved you so much," she whispered. Dean nodded faintly. "I loved him too." "I know," she said. "Everyone knows. You two, there was something special there." Dean closed his eyes for a moment, letting that settle. At exactly 11 o'clock, the service began. The minister spoke first. Careful, practiced words about heaven, about God's plan, about peace and eternal rest. The kind of words people always said at funerals. The kind that were meant to comfort, but somehow never quite reached the places that hurt the most. Then Altavisa Davis stepped forward. Sammy's wife of 20 years. She looked like she was holding herself together by sheer will. Her voice trembled as she spoke, and more than once it almost gave out completely. She talked about his kindness, his generosity, the way he gave everything he had to everyone around him without ever expecting anything in return. She spoke about his work, how he kept going, kept performing, even as the cancer took more and more from him. And then, with a faint, broken smile, she said that even at the end, he had still been making jokes. Still trying to make the nurses laugh, still trying to make dying easier for everyone else in the room. That was Sammy, she said through tears, always performing, always making sure everyone else was okay, even when he was the one falling apart. Alta Davis pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady herself, but the grief was too heavy. "I loved him more than words can say," she whispered, her voice breaking completely. "And I'll miss him every single day for the rest of my life." She couldn't go on. Her daughter gently guided her back to her seat as the room filled with quiet sobs, people no longer trying to hold it in. A moment later, Jesse Jackson rose and made his way to the podium. His presence shifted the room. He didn't speak softly. He spoke with purpose. He talked about Sammy Davis Jr. not just as a performer, but as a man who had stood on the front lines of something much bigger than show business. A warrior, Jackson called him. A man who had marched for civil rights, who had given his money, his time, his voice to a cause that demanded everything and gave nothing easily in return. He spoke about the racism Sammy endured, how doors were closed to him, how opportunities were limited, how he was told where he could go, where he could stay, who he could love. And yet, he never let it poison him. He fought with joy, Jackson said, with talent, with an unshakable belief that love could overcome hate. The room was still. He believed art could change hearts, Jackson continued, that one man with enough courage could make a difference. A pause. And he did. Heads bowed. Tears fell freely now. He changed this country. He made it better. And we honor him by continuing the work he started. The applause came softly, respectful, not celebratory, but filled with recognition. Then Frank Sinatra stood. He moved slower than usual, like each step carried weight. When he reached the podium, he looked out at the room, and for a moment, he said nothing. He looked tired, older than he ever had before. "I've given a lot of eulogies," he finally said, his voice unsteady. "Too many." A faint murmur moved through the crowd. "And I'm tired of it," he continued. "I'm tired of standing up here, saying goodbye to people I love. Tired of trying to find words that don't exist, because there are no words for this." He paused, gathering himself. No words that explain what Sammy meant, what he gave us, what we've lost. Frank exhaled slowly. "You see, Sammy was the most talented person I've ever known." No hesitation, no doubt. He could do anything, sing, dance, act, play instruments, impressions, you name it. He could have been the biggest star in the world. His voice hardened slightly. If the world had let him. The truth landed heavily. "But it didn't," Frank said, "because he was black, because this country couldn't handle a black man being that good." A ripple of quiet agreement spread through the room. They told him where he could perform, where he could stay, who he could marry. They tried to limit him at every turn. Frank's jaw tightened, and he handled it with more grace than anyone had a right to expect. His voice sharpened now, anger breaking through the grief. Sammy deserved better. No one moved. He deserved to be recognized for the genius he was. He deserved freedom, the kind we all take for granted. Frank glanced toward the casket. "This country owes him," he said. "It owes him an apology. It owes him respect. It owes him everything he didn't get while he was alive." People nodded. Some cried harder. Everyone knew he was right. "But here's what you need to understand about Sammy," Frank said, his voice softening again. "Despite all of it, he was happy." That surprised some people. "Genuinely happy," Frank repeated. "He found joy in the work, in the friendships, in those moments on stage when he could make people forget their problems for a couple of hours." A faint, sad smile crossed his face. That was his real gift, not just the talent, the joy, the refusal to let the ugliness of the world take something from him. Frank looked directly at the casket. "I love you, Sam," he said quietly. "You were my brother, my friend, my inspiration." His voice cracked. "And I promise, I'll make sure people remember who you really were." He stepped away from the podium, returned to his seat, and lowered his head into his hands. The strongest man Dean had ever known, breaking. The minister rose again, clearing his throat gently. "We have one more person who would like to speak." A pause. "Dean Martin." The room went completely still. Dean hadn't been seen in public for months. Rumors had spread, whispers that he was done, that grief had taken everything from him, that he had disappeared from the world for good. And now, here he was. He stood slowly, every movement deliberate, every step toward the front of the chapel watched by 200 silent people. He looked thinner, frailer, older than anyone remembered, but he kept walking. When he reached the podium, he placed both hands on it, gripping tightly, steadying himself. He looked out at the crowd, so many faces, all waiting, all wondering if he could do this, or if he would fall apart right there in front of them. Dean opened his mouth. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. The silence stretched. 10 seconds, 20, 30. People began shifting in their seats, uncertain. A quiet tension filled the room. From the front row, Frank started to rise, ready to step in if Dean couldn't go on. Then, Dean found his voice. Rough, quiet, but there. "I can't do this the normal way." The room froze again. "I can't give you a polished eulogy," he said. "I can't stand here and tell stories that make everybody feel better." He swallowed hard. "Because I don't feel better." A long pause. "I feel destroyed." The honesty hit harder than anything rehearsed ever could. "And I think pretending otherwise would be an insult to Sammy." Dean took a slow, unsteady breath. "Sammy Davis Jr. was my best friend for 40 years. Not my work friend," Dean said, his voice unsteady. "Not my Vegas friend." He paused, swallowing hard. "My best friend." The words hung in the air, heavier than anything else spoken that morning. The one I called when I needed to talk, the one who showed up when I didn't even know how to ask for help, the one who knew me better than I knew myself sometimes. His hands began to shake. Dean tightened his grip on the podium, holding on like it was the only solid thing left in the room. "When my son died 3 years ago," his voice faltered, "I didn't just lose him. I lost everything." The silence deepened. "I wanted to die too," he admitted, the words raw and unfiltered. "I wanted to stop existing because the pain was too big, too much. I couldn't see any reason to keep going." A few quiet sobs echoed through the chapel. "And I probably wouldn't have kept going," Dean continued, "except Sammy wouldn't let me." He looked down briefly, gathering what little strength he had. "He came to my house every single day, for 3 months, every day." People in the room shifted, some covering their mouths, others bowing their heads. He sat with me, talked when I needed talking, stayed quiet when I couldn't handle words. Dean's voice softened. Sometimes he just sat there, because that's what I needed. Dean looked up again, his eyes glassy with tears. "He saved my life." There was no exaggeration in it, no performance. "Literally saved it," he said, "because he refused to let me disappear." Now the room was breaking. This wasn't a polished tribute. This was grief, unfiltered, pain that didn't care about presentation. "And now he's gone," Dean said, his voice cracking again. "And I don't know how to do this." He shook his head slightly. I don't know how to live in a world without him in it. I don't know how to step on a stage again, how to tell a joke again, how to do anything that reminds me he's not there anymore. His voice collapsed completely. Dean stopped speaking. For a moment, he just stood there, shoulders trembling, tears falling freely down his face. He didn't try to hide it, didn't try to recover. He let it happen, because there was no strength left to pretend. From the front row, Frank Sinatra rose quietly, concern written across his face. He began to walk toward the podium, ready to help Dean step away, to give him a way out. But Dean lifted a hand. Wait. There's something else, he said, barely above a whisper. Something I need to do. Frank stopped. Dean reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled as he opened it. Sammy asked me for something, he said. 3 weeks before he died, he called me. He paused, remembering. He could barely talk. The cancer had taken his voice, but he still found a way to say what he needed to say. Dean looked down at the paper, though he clearly didn't need it. He asked me to sing at his funeral. A ripple moved through the room. One song, Dean continued. The one we used to do together, back when we were starting out, before the fame, before all of this. His voice softened. Back when we were just 2 kids who loved music. Dean exhaled slowly. I haven't sung in 3 years, he admitted. Haven't even tried. Didn't think I could. Didn't think there was anything left inside me that could make music anymore. He looked up. But Sammy asked. A pause. And I can't say no to Sammy. Not then. Not now. The chapel fell completely silent. Dean glanced toward the room. Can someone play for me? For a brief moment, no one moved. Then a man from the 4th row stood. I can, he said. I'm a pianist. I worked with Sammy for 15 years. Dean gave a small nod. Me and my shadow. Can you do that? The man nodded and walked to the piano in the corner. He sat down, placed his hands gently on the keys, and waited. Dean closed his eyes, took a breath, then another. When he nodded, the music began, soft, delicate, familiar, the opening notes of Me and My Shadow, the song that had followed them through decades, the song that had become a piece of their identity. Dean opened his mouth. Me and my shadow, strolling down the avenue. His voice wasn't the same. It was rough, fragile, worn down by years of grief and silence. Nothing like the smooth, effortless sound that had once filled theaters and sold millions of records, but it was real, and that made it stronger. Me and my shadow, not a soul to tell our troubles to. Tears streamed down his face as he sang, but he didn't stop, didn't pull back. He let every note carry everything he had lost. And when it's 12 o'clock, we climb the stair. His voice wavered. We never knock, for nobody's there. Dean opened his eyes and looked directly at the casket, at Sammy Davis Jr. Just me and my shadow, all alone, and feeling blue. The word broke in his throat. Blue. It lingered in the air, unfinished. Dean's voice gave out completely. He stood there, gasping slightly, trying to find something, anything, to continue with. But there was nothing left. The silence returned, thick and heavy, and then a voice joined him. Frank Sinatra stepped beside him and picked up the line. Like me and my shadow, strolling down the avenue. Frank's voice was older too, rough around the edges, but steady, strong enough to carry what Dean couldn't finish. A moment later, Shirley MacLaine stood from her seat, and she joined them. Me and my shadow, not a soul to tell our troubles to. At first, it was just a few voices, soft, fragile, almost uncertain. Then another voice joined, and another. One by one, people in the chapel began to rise to their feet, as if pulled up by something they couldn't resist. The pianist's hands moved with more confidence now, the melody swelling, filling the room with something that felt bigger than grief. Soon the entire chapel was standing. 200 voices, singing, not perfectly, not polished, but together, singing for Sammy Davis Jr., singing because it was the only thing that felt close to enough. Dean's legs gave out. Without warning, without strength left to hold him, he collapsed. Frank Sinatra caught him before he hit the ground, wrapping an arm around him, holding him upright as the song carried on. And still somehow Dean kept trying to sing. Frank held him close, and together, voices breaking, bodies shaking, they finished the song. Two men holding each other up, singing to a friend who couldn't hear them anymore, but who they needed to sing to anyway. When the final note faded, the room fell into a deep, heavy silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then, somewhere in the back, a single pair of hands began to clap. Slowly. Then another, and another, until the entire chapel was on its feet, applauding, not loudly, not wildly, but with something deeper. Respect, gratitude, love. They were applauding Dean for finding the strength to stand there, to sing when he thought he had nothing left. They were applauding Sammy for inspiring a kind of love that didn't disappear, even in death. They were applauding a friendship that had lasted 40 years and somehow felt like it would last forever. Dean couldn't stand on his own anymore. Frank guided him gently to a chair and sat beside him, still holding his hand. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Two old men who had lost their third. Two survivors, trying to understand how to survive something like this. The service ended quietly after that. People moved slowly down the aisle, past the casket, each one pausing to say their final goodbye. Dean didn't move. He couldn't. He couldn't walk up there again, couldn't face the reality of it, the idea that Sammy was inside that box, that the laughter was gone, that the voice that had filled rooms would never be heard again. He stayed seated, staring ahead, frozen. Eventually, the chapel emptied. The noise faded. Only a few people remained. Frank stood and gently touched Dean's shoulder. "You ready?" Dean shook his head faintly. "No." Frank gave a small, sad nod. "Me neither, but we have to." Together, they walked toward the front, slow steps, heavy steps. They stopped in front of the casket, standing side by side, looking down at the white flowers, the polished wood, the finality that neither of them was ready to accept. Frank spoke first. "Goodbye, Sam," he said quietly. "Thank you for everything, for the music, for the laughter, for the friendship." His voice softened. "For being exactly who you were." A pause. "We're going to miss you every single day." Dean said nothing. He simply reached out and placed his hand on the casket one last time. Cold, still, real. He let his hand rest there longer than necessary, as if trying to memorize the feeling, to hold on to this final moment in a way that wouldn't fade. Then slowly, he reached into his pocket. Frank watched, confused at first. Dean pulled out a small object. He looked at it for a second, just long enough for the memory to pass through him, then gently placed it on top of the casket. It was a glass eye, Sammy's glass eye, the one he had lost in a car accident in 1954, the one he had joked about for years, the one he had once handed to Dean with a grin. "Hold on to this for me," Sammy had said, "in case I need it in the afterlife." Dean had kept it for 36 years, carried it through everything, through fame, through heartbreak, through loss. A small, strange reminder of Sammy's humor and his refusal to let tragedy define him. Now Dean rested his hand beside it. "You can have it back now, Sam," he whispered. His voice barely made it out. "You might need it where you're going." Frank turned away for a moment, overcome again, his hand tightening on Dean's shoulder. "Come on," he said softly after a while. "Let's go home." They walked out together, out of the chapel, out into the bright Los Angeles sunlight. It felt wrong somehow, that the world kept moving, that the sky was still blue, that cars still passed and people still spoke, as if something enormous hadn't just been lost. The world felt emptier, quieter, like something essential had disappeared. The burial itself was private, family only. Dean didn't stay. He couldn't. He couldn't watch them lower the casket into the ground. Couldn't stand there for that final moment where goodbye became permanent. It was too much, so he went home, back to the house, back to the bedroom, back to the photographs, the silence, the long, empty hours where time passed without meaning. But something was different now. Something small, but real. Something had shifted during that funeral. During that song, in that moment where he had found his voice again, after believing it was gone forever. Sammy had asked him to sing, and he had done it. He had found something buried under the grief, pushed through the fear, the pain, the emptiness, and honored his friend the only way he knew how, with music, with honesty, with love. 3 days later, a package arrived. No return address, just his name, written simply on the front. Dean stared at it for a long moment before opening it, carefully. Inside was a videotape. Inside the package was a videotape. Taped to the front was a small note written in careful, slightly uneven handwriting from Altovise Davis. "Dean, Sammy recorded this 2 weeks before he died. He made me promise to send it to you after the funeral. I don't know what's on it. He said it was just for you. Love, Altovise." Dean stared at the note for a long time. Then slowly he slid the tape into the VCR. His hands were shaking as he pressed play. The screen flickered. Static. Then a face appeared. Sammy Davis Jr. He looked frail, thinner than Dean had ever seen him. His face drawn, his body clearly worn down by the cancer that had taken so much from him. But his eye, his one good eye, still had that familiar spark, still alive, still unmistakably Sammy. "Hey, Dean." His voice was barely there. A strained whisper, each word pushed out with effort. "If you're watching this, I'm gone." He paused, catching his breath. "And you're probably a mess." A faint, knowing smile flickered across his face. "I know you. I know how you deal with loss." Another pause. "You hide. You disappear. You convince yourself you can't go on." Even now, sick, dying, speaking from what felt like beyond the end, Sammy was still calling him out. "Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true." Dean leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on the screen. "You can go on," Sammy said. "You will go on." He coughed, a deep, painful sound that seemed to take everything out of him. It took him a moment to recover, to steady his breathing. "Because you're Dean Martin," he continued softly. "Because you're stronger than you think you are." Another breath. "And because people still need you, even if you don't believe that right now." Dean's jaw tightened. "I need you to do something for me," Sammy said. He shifted slightly, as if gathering the last of his strength. "I need you to keep singing." Dean blinked hard. "I don't care if it's just in the shower," Sammy went on, a faint trace of humor still there. "I don't care if it's just for yourself." His voice grew more serious. "But don't let grief take your voice away." A pause. "Don't let losing me mean you lose music too." His eyes softened. "That would break my heart." A small, fragile smile. "And I'm pretty sure Even dead people can have their hearts broken. Dean let out a shaky breath somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "I've loved you for 40 years, Dean," Sammy said quietly. "You've been my brother, my friend, my safe place in a world that wasn't always kind." His voice trembled. "You made me laugh when I wanted to cry. You stood by me when other people didn't." A tear slipped down his cheek. "You saw me as a person, not just as a performer, not just as a black man trying to make it in a world that didn't want me to." His gaze held steady. That meant everything. Dean's eyes filled. "I'm not scared of dying," Sammy continued. "I've had a good run, more success than I ever dreamed of, more love than I probably deserved." He paused again, longer this time. "But I am scared of leaving you alone." The words hit hard. "I'm scared you'll give up," Sammy said. "That without me there to push you, you'll stop trying." He leaned slightly toward the camera. "So I'm making you a promise, even if I can't enforce it." He pointed directly at the lens, at Dean. "Promise me you'll keep living, really living, not just sitting in that bedroom waiting for time to pass." Dean swallowed. "Promise me you'll sing again," Sammy said. "Perform again. Let people hear your voice again." His expression turned firm, almost urgent. "Promise me you'll honor what we had by remembering that life is still worth living." A breath. "Even when it hurts." Another. "Especially when it hurts." Dean closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed. "And Dean," Sammy said softer now, "promise me something else." Dean looked back up. "Forgive yourself." The words landed like a quiet command. For not being there at the end, for getting lost in your own grief, for all the things you think you should have done differently. Sammy shook his head gently. "I forgive you." A tear slipped down his face. "I understand." His voice dropped to almost nothing. "But I need you to forgive yourself, or the guilt will eat you alive." He took a shaky breath. "And I didn't fight this thing for 2 years, just to watch you destroy yourself with guilt." Silence lingered between his words. "I love you, Dean," he said finally. "I always have." His eye glistened. "I always will." A faint smile. "And wherever I'm going, I'll be watching." Another small pause. "Making sure you keep your promise." His voice softened to a whisper. "Making sure you remember that you matter." A breath. "That your voice matters." Another. "That your life matters." His gaze stayed fixed, steady, and full of something deeper than words. "Don't forget that." The screen flickered. "Please, don't forget that." And then, black. The tape ended. Dean sat there in the quiet of his bedroom, the screen reflecting faint light across his face. He was crying, but it was different. Not the hollow, hopeless kind that had filled the room for months. This was something else, something warmer, something that carried weight, but also release. Maybe gratitude, maybe relief, maybe the kind of tears that come when someone gives you permission to keep going. He rewound the tape, watched it again, then again, memorizing every word, every pause, every flicker of expression on Sammy's face, holding on to it like it was the last piece of him left in the world. Over the next few weeks, something began to shift. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Dean started small. He sang in the shower, quietly at first, hesitant, like he was testing whether the voice was still there. It was rough, unsteady, but it was there, still waiting. Then one afternoon, he found himself singing in his bedroom. Not loudly, not for anyone else, just enough to hear it. just enough to remember. Old songs filled the room, Rat Pack songs, standards, the kind of music that had once defined an era and defined them. Songs Dean and Sammy Davis Jr. had performed together hundreds of times on stages lit by neon and applause. Every note hurt. Every lyric carried memory. It hurt like hell, but it also felt right. It felt like honoring Sammy, like keeping something alive that death hadn't managed to take. It felt like keeping a promise. By July, 2 months after the funeral, something had changed enough that Dina Martin noticed it the moment she walked in. She found him in the music room, the same room he hadn't stepped into in 3 years. He was sitting at the piano, fingers moving slowly across the keys, voice rising with the melody, rough, imperfect, but unmistakably his. For the first time in a long time, he sounded like himself. "Dad?" Dean looked up, surprised, then softened. "Hey, sweetheart." She smiled, a little stunned. "You're singing?" He gave a small shrug. "Yeah, Sammy asked me to. Made me promise I would." She stepped closer. "How does it feel?" Dean paused, considering it carefully. "Painful," he admitted, "but good." He rested his hands on the keys, like stretching a muscle that's been frozen too long. It hurts, but it's the kind of hurt that means something's healing. Dina sat beside him on the bench, her voice gentle. "Can I hear something?" Dean nodded. His fingers found the opening notes. "Me and My Shadow." He sang it all the way through. Not perfectly, not like before. His voice cracked in places, faltered in others, but he didn't stop. He finished it, for Sammy, for himself. Because finishing something felt like proof that he was still here, still capable, still alive. When the last note faded, Dina wiped her eyes. "That was beautiful, Dad." Dean shook his head slightly. "It was rough." She smiled through tears. "It was honest. That's better than beautiful." Dean didn't argue. He just sat there for a moment, letting that settle, and then he kept going. Day after day, song after song, keeping the promise, honoring Sammy. And slowly, so slowly he barely noticed at first, something began to return. Purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to keep moving forward. Then, in September, the phone rang again. This time, Dean answered. It was Frank Sinatra. "There's a benefit concert," Frank said, "for Sammy's medical bills. Altavise is buried in debt from the treatment. We're trying to raise money to help her." Dean closed his eyes briefly. "I need you to perform," Frank added. Dean's first instinct came fast and sharp. "No, hide. Protect yourself. Don't go back out there." But then he remembered the tape. Sammy's voice. "Promise me you'll keep singing." Dean exhaled slowly. "Okay." There was a pause. "Okay," Frank repeated, almost surprised. "Yeah," Dean said quietly. "When is it?" "October 6th, Shrine Auditorium." Another pause. "Will you be ready?" Dean looked at the piano in front of him. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'll try." That was enough. The concert came together quickly. Big names stepped in without hesitation. Frank Sinatra, Liza Minnelli, Ella Fitzgerald, Gregory Hines. Everyone who had loved Sammy. Everyone who understood what he had meant. Everyone who wanted to help Altavise Davis rebuild after everything had been taken from her. Because Sammy hadn't just died. He had fought for 2 years. And the cost of that fight had been more than $1 million. Dean practiced every day, worked with a vocal coach, pushed his voice carefully, patiently back into shape. It wasn't what it used to be. It couldn't be. He was 73 now. Time had done what time always does. But it was still his voice. Still capable of carrying feeling, still capable of reaching people. October 6, 1990, Shrine Auditorium, sold out, 3,000 people, all there for the same reason. Backstage, Dean sat quietly, hands resting on his knees. He felt it creeping in, the nerves, the fear. This was his first performance in 3 years, his first time on stage since losing his son, his first time standing in front of an audience that would see everything, the age, the grief, the distance from who he once was. The door opened. Frank stepped in. "You nervous?" Dean let out a dry breath. "Terrified." Frank smiled slightly. "Good." Dean raised an eyebrow. "That means you care," Frank said. "Remember, you told me that once." Dean blinked. "Did I?" "Long time ago," Frank said. "I was nervous before a show. You told me the day I stopped being nervous was the day I should quit." Dean let out a small laugh. "I said something smart?" "Once or twice," Frank replied. "Between the drinking act and the jokes, you occasionally made sense." They both laughed. A real laugh. The kind Dean hadn't felt in months. Frank's expression softened. "Thank you," he said, "for doing this. For Sammy. For Altovise. For all of us." Dean shook his head gently. "I'm doing it because Sammy asked me to," he said. "Because he made me promise I'd keep singing." Frank studied him. "When did he ask you?" Dean met his eyes. "On a videotape," he said. 2 weeks before he died." Frank's face changed. "He knew," Dean added quietly. "He knew I'd want to quit. Knew I'd hide." A pause. "So he made sure I couldn't." Frank's eyes filled slightly. "He knew us too well." Dean nodded. "Yeah," he said. "He knew everything." That had always been Sammy's gift. Seeing people clearly. Understanding what they needed, even when they didn't. From outside, the muffled sound of the audience grew louder. The show was starting. 8 o'clock. One performer after another took the stage, each one bringing their own tribute, their own piece of Sammy. And backstage, Dean waited, listening, breathing, holding on to the promise that had brought him there. Each performer gave everything they had that night. Song after song, story after story. Every note carried a piece of Sammy Davis Jr. Every voice carried love, respect, and the quiet understanding that they were doing more than performing. They were helping Altovise Davis, honoring a man who had given so much of himself to the world. At 9:30, the lights dimmed slightly. Frank Sinatra stepped forward. The room settled. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady but full. "This next performer hasn't been on stage in 3 years." A murmur moved through the crowd. "He's been through hell, lost his son, lost his best friend, lost himself for a while." Frank paused. "But tonight, he's here." Another pause. "He's standing, he's ready to sing, because that's what Sammy would have wanted." Frank looked toward the wings. "Please welcome my friend, my brother, Dean Martin." The crowd rose instantly. Not polite applause, not distant admiration, real applause, grateful applause. Because seeing Dean Martin step onto that stage again didn't feel like a performance. It felt like a return. Dean walked out slowly. The spotlight found him, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. He looked different, thinner, older, fragile in a way people weren't used to seeing. But he was there, present, alive. He reached the microphone and stood still, letting the applause settle over him. Then gently, he raised his hand. The room quieted. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft but clear. "Thank you for coming tonight, for giving, for helping Altovise, for remembering Sammy." A pause. "For caring that he's gone." His voice trembled, but he didn't stop. I'm going to sing one song. The audience leaned in. The song Sammy and I used to sing together, he continued. The one that meant everything to us. He took a breath. I'm singing it for him, for Altavisa, for everyone who loved him, and for myself. A small pause, because singing it reminds me that what we had was real. His eyes softened, that it mattered. Another breath, and that it doesn't disappear just because he's gone. The piano began, soft, familiar. Dean closed his eyes. Then he sang, Me and My Shadow, strolling down the avenue.
His voice wasn't perfect.
It wasn't smooth like it once had been, but it was real. Every note carried 40 years of friendship and 4 months of grief. Me and my shadow, not a soul to tell our troubles to. He opened his eyes. 3,000 people stood in front of him, some crying, some swaying gently, all remembering Sammy, remembering the nights when the Rat Pack ruled the stage and made the world feel lighter. And when it's 12 o'clock, we climb the stair. His voice wavered. We never knock, for nobody's there. The line hit him hard, because now nobody was there. Sammy was gone. The shadow was gone. And Dean was singing alone. He would always be singing alone now. Just me and my shadow, all alone and feeling blue. The last word lingered, then silence. Dean stood still, letting it pass through him, letting the grief settle, letting himself breathe again. And then the room exploded. A standing ovation. 3,000 people on their feet, applauding, cheering, crying, not just for the performance, for what it meant, for what it took. Frank rushed onto the stage and pulled Dean into a tight embrace. You did it, he said, his voice breaking. You really did it. Dean nodded faintly. I did it for Sammy. Frank pulled back slightly, eyes wet. He knows, he said. Wherever he is, he knows, and he's proud of you. That night became more than just a concert. It became a turning point. Dean performed only once more after that, a small charity event in 1993. His last public appearance before his health finally gave out. But this night, this moment at Shrine Auditorium, this was the one that mattered. Because this was the night Dean Martin kept his promise. The night he found his voice again. The night he proved that grief doesn't have to end your story. That loss, no matter how deep, doesn't have to destroy you. That even after losing the people you love most, you can still find a reason to stand up and sing. Dean Martin passed away on Christmas Day, 1995, 5 years after Sammy. His family was with him, his children, the people who loved him. Frank had passed earlier that same year. And just like that, the Rat Pack was gone. All 3 of them, gone from this world. But maybe not gone from each other. At Dean's funeral, a recording played. Me and my shadow, Dean and Sammy, together again. Their voices blending the way they always had, effortless, timeless, untouched by everything that had come after. And Deana Martin stood to speak. My dad kept every promise he ever made, she said. But the most important one was the one he made to Sammy. The room was still. He promised he'd keep singing, keep living, keep finding joy, even when it felt impossible. A soft breath. And he kept that promise for 5 years. Her voice trembled. 5 years of showing up, of pushing through the pain, of honoring his friend by refusing to give up. She looked out at the crowd. That's who my father was, a man who kept his promises, even when it cost him everything. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. shared 40 years of friendship. They performed together, laughed together, carried each other through moments no one else ever saw. And when Sammy died, Dean could have disappeared. He almost did, but he didn't. Because Sammy asked him not to. Because Sammy believed in him, even at the very end. And sometimes that's enough. Enough to keep someone going. Enough to pull them back from the edge. Enough to remind them that life, even broken, is still worth living. Dean kept his promise. He kept singing. He kept living, and he kept honoring his friend, not just in words, but in the way he chose to go on. And that's what made it matter. Not just the song, not just the funeral, but everything that came after. Because real friendship doesn't end when someone is gone. It continues in the choices you make, in the promises you keep, in the life you keep living. Somewhere, however you choose to believe it, they're together again. Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., the Rat Pack, side by side, voices blending. Me and my shadow. If this story moved you, take a second to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and keep stories like this alive. And I'll see you in the next video.